Good evening, and firstly I hope all of you are keeping safe and well, and you're practicing social distancing and all the measures that our governments wherever you are in the world have told us to practice. So firstly, I just hope you're all doing safe, you're all keeping safe, feeling well, feeling healthy, and connecting with your friends and family in this virtual world that we're finding ourselves in at the moment. So tonight I'm going to cover a subject around careers specifically, and what you can do even in times such as we're in, which for many of us can be quite drastic times in terms of looking at our careers. I know I've certainly got friends and family that have gone into furlough arrangements with work, or for some people that even just as this virus was hitting were actually made redundant. So I know for many of us we're going to be in very different situations with our career. However, as I mentioned before, and in a video I did last week and the week before, I talked about choosing between empowering thoughts and disempowering thoughts. That is something we can control and influence. And as I'm sure you've seen by so much content on social media, our mindset and our approach to what's going on at the moment is important. And that also goes for our career. So you've got a choice about whether you can really sink or swim, I suppose, and how you can really realign your thoughts to make them more empowering and think about how can I use this time to self-reflect and really think about what I want in my career, wherever you are in your career at the moment with what's happening in the world. It may be, as I said, that some of you are on furlough arrangements because you're not able to fulfil your role to its fullest, or perhaps your hours have been scaled back a bit, perhaps your role has disappeared or changed. And some sectors are going through this, a more tougher situation than others. So, for example, I've got friends and colleagues in HR. I know that they're extremely busy because there's so many changes to policy and what's going on in companies to deal with the virus and to help people volunteer and things like that. I know that in transport, logistics, supply chain, as you can imagine, that's an incredibly busy area. And NHS as well. That I was talking to somebody last night, and we were looking for roles in the NHS, and there were definitely roles out there, and there were definitely roles that matched her skill set. So generally speaking, I think this time is a real time for us to be able to still self-reflect. Now, I know some of you may have children, be looking after children whilst you're working at home or not being able to work at the moment. So I know that it might feel very stressful. But this is a really good time to be present and self-reflect and think about some of the things that I've talked about in previous videos. That doesn't change. So whether it's, you've got to think about your career because of the situation you're in, or because you are... sorry, someone's just sent me a message. If you have to look at your career, or whether it's something that you've been thinking about, perhaps you've got more time. Not everyone, but perhaps some of us have got more time for that self-reflection, asking ourselves important career questions and being present and reflecting on your career today and what that might look like in the future. So this is a great opportunity to review your skill set. Have a look through some of the roles that you've done before, some of the roles you've been doing lately, and reflect on your skill sets. And if there is a role or a sector that you think, do you know what, it seems like there's still things happening in that sector, where can you align your skills to that sector or that particular role? You can still do that. The virus doesn't stop us doing these things. Think about your likes and dislikes. If you go through the trajectory of your career or your roles, what are the things that you really hated doing? What are the things that you like doing? Now, it is a bit of an 80-20 rule. I think if you can enjoy 80% of your role, that's a really good figure to work with, because there's always going to be that 20% of anything we do that we don't like. My uncle works in film, and I know that he says, do you know what, sometimes it's really boring just sitting around doing nothing, whereas to the rest of us, being on a film set might sound very glamorous. So it's almost like that 80-20 rule, but the other way round, in terms of 80%, if your job's 80% fulfilling you and you're feeling happy in it, then that's great. But the virus doesn't stop us being able to review our skills and taking stock of our career. And it may well be that perhaps you've got time to do that now because you're not commuting, you're not travelling. I know it might be different if you have got children at home, so I do appreciate that. And it's really important that whatever your situation is, you're keeping fit, healthy and balanced. So you've got choices really about whether you want to hunker down but hunker down as in hide away and ignore what's happening, or hunker down and use this as an opportunity to really work out what you might want to do in the future, or what you have to do now because your role has changed. So as I said, going through your roles and reviewing your skill sets, reviewing what you liked and you don't like, reviewing the feedback that you've had in roles is really important as well. Are there some things that you need to look at? So if you identify that actually in the future, I might want to go into this, or I'm thinking about going into this sector, have a look at those roles on LinkedIn, on jobs boards. Have a look and see if you can pick up some clues from job adverts, because there are jobs out there. There's still jobs out there. And look at some of the words they use, some of the tasks, and start to keep a note on whether those are things that you might like to do in the future. And it's a perfect opportunity, if you've got the time and the space, to look at updating your training. There is a ton of free training being released at the moment, and you've also got course platforms such as Udemy, where you can get really knocked down price courses on any subject. It's unbelievable what's on there. So if there is something that you've thought, do you know what, I really fancy exploring this in my career, or I'm just interested in it and want to see where I go with this, then now's the time maybe to have a look at those courses, to keep you mentally busy and to really be present and focus on something other than what's going on in the world. And I know that Reed, for example, the big recruitment organisation, they have jobs boards. They also have courses, and they are very, very cost effective. And I know that certain organisations as well are giving away free training. So this is a really good opportunity to review those skills, review what you've liked in your role, what you haven't liked, review the feedback that you've had, think about, is there a skills gap there I need to fill, and use this time wisely and productively. So the other thing I wanted to mention is that companies are still recruiting. I was with a lady last night who was really confused about her career. So we did a real a blitz session, going through things really, really quickly in an hour about what she liked, what she didn't like. And we started doing some live work together on LinkedIn to look at the various roles. Now, there are roles out there. There are people still recruiting. And there's a part of me that thinks that if these roles are still being recruited for, then in a way, we know that those are important roles, because we know that the economy is going through a challenging time at the moment and may do for some time. But the roles that are being recruited for, if they're still needed, that must mean that they're important roles. Otherwise, they would be put on hold. And I know that is starting to happen in various places. So you know that perhaps the roles that are being advertised are roles that definitely need to be recruited for. And what it also could mean is that the companies or organisations recruiting for those roles are potentially a bit more agile, a bit more dynamic, and a bit more forward thinking and prepared. So they're still in a place where they can think about recruiting for these roles. So have a look at those organisations, because it may well be that those organisations have been the best prepared, they've been focused, they've been agile, and they still have been able to run their business through the challenging situation we're going through at the moment and recruit important roles. So number one, seeing roles advertised means that there is a need for that role. Otherwise, they would have put the recruitment on hold. Number two, it may well say something about the company, that they are able to still recruit, that they've thought about things and they deem this as a valuable role, and they are dynamic and prepared for what may be coming. And also, it may mean that those companies are able to, when things start to turn around, they're able to rebound more quickly. So they're able to rebound and sort of have these roles in place that are necessary and be able to sort of move forward from what's happening now. So if you look at those organisations, and if they're all recruiting for a few roles, it may well be that they're actually, there's no certainty in life, but it may well be that those companies are really thinking on the front foot about what's happening. The other thing I wanted to say was that this is back to disempowering thoughts and empowering thoughts, is to try not to let ourselves get trapped by fear. I know that there's a lot of fear, a lot of worry at the moment. People are in all sorts of different situations in terms of what's happening in this period of isolation. But be careful of not letting that fear rule you too much, particularly when it comes to your career. Allow yourself that time to really think about planning your career. What do you want? What do you have to do now? What do you want to do now? How can you prepare? What do you want to be ready, steady, go, ready for when we get through this situation, which I'm sure we will do. So make sure that you're not over accommodating now, and you're not suppressing any of those thoughts about what you might want to do in the future. I know we've all got a lot going on in our minds. I know if we've got children and we've got husbands and wives working at home together, things might be a little tense, but carve out that space and don't let this situation stop you from really progressing your goals and really thinking about what you want your career in the future. And maybe, just maybe, this whole situation has given you a real time for clarity. I think this has been a real grounding point in our evolution as human beings. And the fact is that it can give you a lot of clarity, because we're having to stop, be present, stay where we are and think about, hang on a minute, is this what I want in life? So some of you may be going through that. So it's a great opportunity to get that clarity and act upon it. And the other thing is as well, when I was talking about fear and not letting your fear stop you from making career decisions, there's nothing wrong in still having that conversation if you're still working to say, look, how can my role evolve and shift? There might be things that your company or organisation needs you to do, critically needs you to do, that you would be really good at. And until you have that open conversation, you don't know. Because sometimes at the moment, leaders and managers are incredibly stressed. So if you can offer a solution around, look, I've noticed we're having a challenge with this, or if you ask the question about what are our current challenges, then that might be able to organically move you into a new area of your career that you hadn't thought of and you might actually quite enjoy. And without doing that, you might miss out on some exciting opportunities where when things start to, if they're recruiting now and as things start to progress a bit more, that they recruit someone else externally. And because you didn't ask the questions or have the conversation, you may well have missed out on that opportunity, or perhaps you hunkered down too much in your current job and out of fear you're working long hours, being over accommodating without putting your needs first. So don't forget, it's still a good time to have those really important conversations. It's about staying put or getting moving, and you can still get moving in your current role and have those conversations. And remember what I said about empowering and disempowering thoughts. Notice how you feel. If something makes you feel less than, a bit low, then that's a disempowering thought. And just notice, I'm having a disempowering thought. How can I shift that to empowering? What can I do to make a difference in my life or my career? Yes, it may take long to get a role at the moment, so it's even better if you start looking, reflecting, doing some training sooner rather than later. But it's also another opportunity to make sideways shifts, as I mentioned before. And as I said before, 80% of, if you do a role where you love 80% of it, then that's okay. That's a pretty good place to be, actually. And you could even argue maybe 70-30, but I like to say 80-20. So passion in a career is important, but maybe at the moment it's about saying, do you know what, 80% of this role is okay. How can I get it up to 85? Or how do I find that next role that's going to give me that 80-85%? You might be surprised at what you find once you start looking into it. Now, as I mentioned before, there are certain sectors that are obviously, there's no doubt about it, taking a hit at the moment, but there are other sectors where there is work available and there are still roles and roles are being recruited. And as I mentioned, if that recruitment is still on, that to me might suggest that those are important roles that the company recognises they still need to recruit for, because they're managing their business through the crisis. So they might also be a good company to work for. So now might be an opportunity to think, well, hang on a minute, there's another sector I want to look at. There's another type of organisation I want to look at, and have a look at them, such as government, HR, banking. They've all got a lot of things going on, logistics and supply chain. Those are just some of the ones off the top of my head that I can think of that are really, really busy at the moment, and there's a lot going on. And as I said, make the most of training. Whether you can do training, if your role's a bit quiet at the moment, or if you're running and leading a team and they, for example, can't go out and see customers as much because of social distancing, then can you make the most of internal training? As a manager or a leader, can you give your teams training as part of their goals to swap out some of the other goals that they can't fulfill? Can you give them a specific goal about completing a course, completing this? And I mean, maybe for you, it's like, do you know what? I've always wanted to be a graphic designer, or I've had an interest in photography. I want to take that further. Then have a look at it. Use this time to take advantage of all the things that are on offer. There's really cheap courses on Read, on Udemy, on other platforms, and there's a lot of companies giving away free training as well. So make the most of it. So have a look at that. Have a look at your skills. Have a look at what you enjoy, what you don't enjoy, whether you're in a role or not in a role at the moment. Take advantage of the training on offer. And this is a brilliant opportunity to retrain. Don't forget to have those conversations where you are currently working to see if you feel like your role is shifting, or perhaps your role is not as busy as it was. I mean, I was coaching someone last week and he was saying, well, they were talking about my role. And I said, well, why not go in there and ask them, what are your current challenges at the moment? What is it that you're struggling with? What do you need help with? Well, what's happened is this gentleman has now gone in. His role has shifted slightly into a role that will really show off his talents. And it's a role in a direction he wanted to go with. And that's because he took the proactive step of having that conversation, not being disempowered, but thinking, right, hang on, let me have that conversation. What can I do? Where can I pitch in? And from that, he's managed to get a role that he really, really enjoys. And they are now considering, based on his performance in this interim role, which is quite a senior role, they're now talking about how he may well be put on a path when things get back to normal, how he will be put onto a path for his ideal role, which was as general manager, operations director. So out of something that could have been quite negative, he's really taken it with both hands forward and had that conversation. Similarly, I was talking to a lady last night who's working for a firm, and the leader is very absent. The leader, in fact, is off on stress. The other business leader is not being proactive, is not communicating with the team, and communicating is so important at the moment for all of us, personally and professionally. So there's a really toxic atmosphere at work, and she's sort of not knowing what she's supposed to be doing. And again, as I've said earlier in this video, that's a great opportunity to really reflect on your skills, what training you've had to date, what you might want to go into, and how you can retrain and take advantage of further training. And I think she felt a bit despondent because she'd been in this toxic environment so long. And she's in a lucky position where she could, because her husband works, she may be able to leave that job and not have to have one to go to. However, she says, I still want to work. We still could do with boosting our income. So we talked about it, and we went on LinkedIn and we looked through these jobs in her particular area, in office management, albeit virtually, business administration, and there were lots and lots of roles out there. And that was in Blackpool, an area that may not have had typically as many roles as some of the bigger cities like Manchester, London, those kind of areas. There were still lots of roles there. So that really lifted her spirits, and we sat down and said, well, what do you like? What don't you like? So she went from having no idea about what she wanted to do or how to get out of this toxic environment to now a whole suite of actions and a clear picture of what career might suit her. So it's amazing what you can do if you just spend a bit of time reviewing everything. So just to recap, and thank you for everyone that's joined tonight and is watching. And hello, Mish. Nice to see you. Well, see your picture on here. What I've covered tonight is that I understand that for many of us, this will be a challenging time, that roles may have disappeared. They may have changed. You may be on furlough. But even during this pandemic, the situation we're in, we can still control, manage, master our mindset. Don't let this thing bring you down as well. We've all got to look after our health, our happiness. We may have children, parents we've got to look after, but this is the prime opportunity where perhaps we're not rushing about as much as we used to because we're much more housebound, to review your skills. Think about what you like and you don't like. Review what feedback you've had. Are there any themes? Are there some courses you can take to improve on some of that feedback that you may have had? Do some reading of some key books that might help you obtain those skills. And remember not to over-accommodate in your current role, because what might happen is they might see you as someone, they're just the reliable person. Whereas if you go in proactively and you feel you want to develop your role, that you can still have that conversation now. And in fact, I think most businesses would welcome that initiative to say, What are the challenges? Where can I help? And you just don't know where that open conversation is going to take you in a direction that you may have wanted to go already, such as the example of one of my clients that I'm working with at the moment, and he's found himself in that exact situation at the moment, where at the end of, he's been moved into a new role, which really is what he wanted to do, and now he's on a flight plan to really look at this director of ops, business unit director type role that he always wanted. Remember, as I said, that the role's being recruited for now, and there are roles out there. Get your LinkedIn profile up to date, flick on that button that says looking for work, and make sure that you've set up your job searches. You can get notifications on jobs as they appear, because my view is that the roles that are being recruited for now are roles that companies need. Otherwise, they wouldn't be recruiting for them. They would be put on hold. So there are still roles out there, and it would suggest that the companies recruiting for them are a little bit more on the front foot, have a bit more business stability behind them. Otherwise, they wouldn't be recruiting at all. And don't forget to take advantage of all the training that's out there, be that on Reed, be that on Udemy, be that on other forums and platforms. There's tons of free training and knockdown training available to you. And do have those proactive conversations where you are. Don't be scared of having a conversation. Show yourself to be a positive person that can help your company. And it may well be that you're considering a complete career change. And again, reflect on the questions that I asked earlier in the video. What can I do to improve the skills that I have for the thing that I want to do? And think about it as 80-20. If you enjoy 80% of what you're doing, that's a good place to be in, because there are always things in our roles. Doesn't matter what job you do, there are always parts of our roles that we don't enjoy. So think of this as a brilliant opportunity to retrain yourself, rethink your career, open up conversations that maybe you've been putting off for a while, and really start to write down and acknowledge what your skills are, the kind of role that you might want to go into, or the kind of career, what skills you need for that, and where's the gap that you need to fill. So this is all advice that I've shared before, and to me, this advice doesn't stop just because we're in a pandemic. It's a prime opportunity for many of us to really think, hang on a minute, what do I want? How do I go about it? And really set yourself a course of action and plan to move towards something you want to do, whether that's your current role, shifting it in a different direction, or whether that's a completely new career, or just a tweak on what you're doing already. So I hope that's been valuable tonight, and it hasn't interrupted the BBC broadcast for you too much. And I hope you're all keeping safe, well, happy, and that you're choosing to think empowering thoughts rather than disempowering thoughts, because the more you think in an empowering way, it feeds us energy, it gives us motivation, and just, as I say, I've been saying for a few weeks now, this is a common thread I've been saying, really notice your thoughts and ask yourself, is this an empowering thought or action, or is it a disempowering thought or action? Disempowering means you feel less than, you feel a bit shrunk down. Empowering means that you feel, do you know what? Yeah, I might not have all the answers, things might not be secure, but I am going to proactively take that step forward. And I think that is something we can control. It's not something that can be controlled outside of us. We can still control and master the actions that we take and the attitudes that we care to adopt. Okay, so have a great day, have a great evening wherever you are. If you've got any questions and want to make any comments, then please do drop me a line. If you've got any particular topics you'd like me to cover in these unprecedented times, then feel free to drop me a note, and I'll do a Facebook Live on that as well. All right then, thanks for watching. Goodbye.